Okay, good morning, ladies and gents. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to have a little chat today about digital transformation and more how it works within the organization, how it can help businesses, and more in particular in finance and credit, where obviously most of us are involved. My name is Johan. I am the head of consulting for Ignoxtica, and today we've got with us Maurice Forster, who is our CTO. Welcome, Maurice. I think this is the first one. We are going to give Maurice some questions, some hard-hitting questions, and try and get some answers and some insights from him. But I think before we start with that, Maurice, just a little bit of background from your side, sort of background check. I know we had a little laugh about police clearance earlier, but just where you're coming from, where you work, and you know where you're at now. Obviously, is a result of a long career in terms of IT and technology. So,
Sure.
Just a little bit of background from yourself.
Well, I've always enjoyed technology and was tinkering from a very young age. I can remember building computer labs for my high school. So from a very young age, I think I'm involved with that. After my studies, I went to Belgium, did my internship there, worked from there with a company called Frog Design. Frog Design is an international innovation firm. Very interesting, did a couple of projects, in South Africa and Singapore and so forth.
Nice.
From there, went over to DevHouse, at that point called 315, which will become Brighthouse. From Brighthouse, Dimension Data, and obviously Dimension Data as part of NTT. So they've been through a long kind of cycle, coming from a small company to quite a large, extensive organization.
Yeah.
In that space, very much worked with a lot of different banks, works for payment gateways. Part of the consulting services team, very much focused around new product development and consulting towards businesses around technology and how to solve certain problems. So very interesting things that there. The exciting part from Ignoxtica for me was just being here, working on products and services that I kind of feel I own to a certain degree.
Yeah,
it's not something we're building for somebody else, something that we're making a difference, specifically within the trade credit space. And this is kind of where we are right now.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So I think today we're going to touch a lot on the different subjects and components of digital transformation. And we'll ask Maurice a lot of questions, and hopefully you can answer some of them. But if you guys want to add in or ask a question, please raise your hand or type it in the comment section. And we've got a Q&A section, as I said, at the end. We will be able to address some of those. So I think we'll kick off. And I think from my background, sort of being in credit my whole life, if you say to me digital transformation, I've got an idea of what it is. But what do we mean when we say digital transformation? What is that concept?
Yeah, I think it's a very big umbrella statement to make. I think in a large sense, it's just around the adoption of technology throughout the organization in the strategy. It could be replacing existing systems and processes with technology. It could be that you want to build new ones through innovation. So it's really around just the adoption of technology in an organization.
Okay, so it's not necessarily replacing people, but rather looking at the processes and trying to automate that, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, that's definitely a key part of it, but it's also around the innovation of finding new solutions and new approaches towards emergent kind of ideas as well. So it's not just on the existing side, but it covers both of them, yes.
I think a lot of times when you talk about automation, people are always scared to think that when I automate something or when I do something that is going to be quicker, faster, and moving the needle, so to speak, that it's going to take my job away from me. We talk a lot to the credit and the finance people, and sometimes we do get pushback from them saying that we don't necessarily want to automate this because, what if this job gets redundant? What if this person feels that, the job is in jeopardy in terms of the transformation that we're talking about? And I think it's important to understand that from an automation perspective, it makes the processes and what you do better as opposed to replacing a person, if it's what I'm saying.
It's a good point. I think there's a theme in the way that we move, as society, as we improve, we've have to do more with less. I think that's something that's really a prevailing kind of thought of the day, and is getting more and more, important. And I think that it speaks to our two fundamental fears. I'm getting a little bit into psychology over here, but it's around the fear of losing control and the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of cases, people that are not comfortable with technology kind of perceive it as a threat.
Yeah.
And also the fearing of kind of losing the control around that. And I think it's a little bit about education, and I want to say systematic exposure and getting more and more comfortable with technology that kind of breaks down that barriers and then allow people to see that, technology is not our enemy. I don't want to go into lots of discussions around that, but there's a whole fear around the singularity. What do we do when general intelligence take over and that kind of stuff?
Yes.
And there's kind of two schools of thought. The one school of thought says, oh, we should fear because once AI can think as we can, we won't have a place in the world.
Yeah.
And there's another school of thought, which the one is I'm more subscribed to, which is it's going to augment what we do. We're going to be outsourcing a lot of the things that we're doing into these kind of systems and AI, whatever the case might be, so that we can be more effective, so that we can do things better. So it's not about replacement. It's about being able to do more with less.
Yeah. And I think you're right, because a lot of conversations we have is to that where people firstly fear that sort of transition in terms of I've been doing something manually for a certain time period my whole life, and now it's to be automated. Firstly, the fear, and secondly, just understanding exactly what that means in terms of this will make my life easier as opposed to replacing something in there as well. And I think it's an important point to make that, in our world, in the finance world, to automate things and to give new meaning to things and to show you how it can be quicker, better, faster, is not wanting to replace a person, but more to streamline and automate that process for a person.
Yeah,
because that's what we talked in terms of our products that we do. All right, so why is digital transformation important? Why is it important to move with the times? Because some of the businesses we interact with say, look, we've been doing it this way for 100 years. It's fine this way. We're happy. We don't need to go the automated route. We don't need to automate this process or that process. So why, in your opinion, is it important to move with the times, and why is transformation important?
I hope I'm going to say it a couple of times throughout this conversation, but I think it's important to understand that digital transformation is a tool. Right? It's not a destination. Okay. So I think that typically they say that it speaks to three different parts. So the one part is improved efficiencies. So that's a key deliverable around that. There's also the increased value, taking what you have right now and adding more value to it. And thirdly, kind of finding innovative solutions and breaking existing ceilings and boundaries that you have. So there's definitely a lot that is to offer and to be considered. But I think it's important to understand that it shouldn't be something that we strive to digitally transform. We need to be in a state where technology is part of our business. And digital transformation, I think, is a tool and a way to get there.
Okay, sounds good. So if we then go further and say, how do we know, sort of what initiatives will move the needle in transformation? Sorry, have we got a question? No. Right. Just to recap on that, how do we know what initiatives will move the needle? What will make a difference in terms of transformation for businesses? How do you establish that?
Right. So I think I just alluded to it now, but I think it's important to understand that we don't want the goal to be digital transformation. We want the goal to be an effective business that delivers great value to our customers. So I would say the starting point is with all business to have an effective business strategy and kind of operating, plan or operating.
So that's the starting point.
So, just to touch on that, I think that we from an Oxyco perspective, we follow the 10x strategy.
Yeah.
We have OKRs, we have product management function, we have a combination of SAFe and Scrum that we're using in our operating model. So all of these components serves to the purpose of identifying what is the most important next thing to look into. Right.
What's the strategy?
What's the strategy? Where are we going? And how does it look kind of forward? So I think all business should have that, or a version of that, which is custom to kind of how they execute. But what is important, I think, from a technology perspective, is that there should be a tech-savvy representation from the strategic side all the way through the execution, so that there's a technology awareness that forms part of this plan. We want to achieve this business goal. How do we leverage technology to do it? Is it the right place to leverage technology? And kind of make that part, as a CTO, I would love to have a key objective saying digital transformation and just kind of push my own projects underneath it. That will make me happy.
Of course.
But that's not the best thing for the business. The business needs to be focused on things that are going to be important for them achieving specific business goals. And that's, that's a little bit of a learning from my side as well, was being that I kind of thought about the technology department. We've got the product management, we've got the data scientists, we've got the developers, and seeing how all of them work together. I'm kind of so used to like all technology things needs to go through the technology department and start thinking about it from a more distributed version of saying that the whole organization needs to be tech savvy, certain things on our side, but everybody needs to have a bit of technology inside their processes and how they work.
Sure. So when you say the organization as a business should be tech savvy, it's important that to qualify that is not to say that everybody should be an expert in technology or IT. It's just everybody should be aware of that component, because when you want to go that route, it is important that everybody contributes towards what in my department, in my little field, in my job is going to be affected when we're talking about digital transformation, firstly. And secondly, what can I contribute in order to giving you advice or ideas of how it's going to make a lot better? Because we've got a IT department or an outsourced IT division in every organization, and they sort of come in and they service the client to an extent in terms of your needs. But when it comes to digital transformation, it is where you need to contribute and say, this is how I'm going to be more effective when digital transformation is going to be coming in. It's not necessarily the IT department, as you say, enforcing things, saying this is how we're going to do it. But it's more that the whole business should be involved, and not necessarily an expert, but just saying, this, in my opinion, is what I think will work.
Yeah, I think it's a very important conversation to have. I think, as you mentioned, everybody's not experts in everything, and and it's important to understand the stages in adoption of technology as well. I think a couple of years ago, we were pretty much centralized technology within a specific space. And if you want something technologically done, you have to go through the development team. You have to wait, a long time until you get your turn. Internal projects got, secondary attention to external client projects and so forth. So this is it was a necessary evolution, I think, as well, to say that we need to start not hogging the technology, as a single team. It's about celebrating it when people have breakthroughs, when people use maybe not as advanced custom development, but they start using low-code tools to automate specific tasks.
Yeah.
Kind of have that introduction. But there's an important part around knowing who to include in the conversation. In our organization, it's kind of easy in a certain degree because our agile approach allows for collaborative sprint planning, collaborative PI planning. So there's a conversation with everybody in the same room. It's a pretty expensive exercise if you think about having the entire organization for an entire day talking about the next 6 weeks of strategy.
Yeah.
And it's not, I think, a luxury that all organizations have to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit, I think, that every company needs to ask themselves, like, how do we make sure that the right people are in the room, and make sure that they are included in the conversation.
Yeah. All the stakeholders, I think, is important, as you say, to be part of that sort of transformation process. And in our world, I know that we break it down into, when I started here from a finance background, to talk IT language is sort of foreign. So, you have to learn to adopt to the process of digital transformation. And, if I could put it in a simple term, as we break it down to bite-sized sort of elements where you can, in a 2-week period, which we refer to as a sprint, do something and achieve something. And then the bigger picture is the sort of PI, which is the 6-week period. And you have those sort of plans every second week to ensure what are we going to achieve in the next 2 weeks. And that then gets broken down into sort of bite sizes. So I think the process that we follow, right or wrong, works for us. And there's obviously different processes that you can follow in order to achieve that. But I think the most important thing that we're trying to say here is that it needs to be inclusive of everybody that's playing a part in the business that's got a stake in terms of that transformation process.
Definitely. I think that, you almost want to leverage the multiple intelligences of everybody that's in the room, and making sure that technology has a seat on the table. I think that's important.
Yeah.
It's difficult I don't think there's a single blueprint that everybody can follow and it will just work. But if you're at a point in an organization where you don't know where to start, all right, and you don't have the right people in the room, you might not even have the right people on payroll, like part of your employees, then it's important that you reach out. Maybe you can have tech advisory people that you can contact and say, listen here, you're an influential person, technology. Can I come to you with questions? You have to build that support structure.
Yeah.
It could also be that you could have external consultants that comes up. It comes at a premium, but if you don't have that capability or you want to build it up, it's very dangerous to go down a route the blind leading the blind kind of thing if you don't have any of that in place. And you can start asking questions to stimulate the conversation. Can our operations deliver the solution and the demand that we need for the next 6 months? Is our value proposition continuing to be competitive? Is there changes in the market that's affecting us that we need to cater for and adjust for? And is there technological ways to replace old, embedded ways of how the market is treating things? Kind of disruptive ways. So these kind of just like ways to start and stimulate the conversation, but ultimately these things shouldn't be isolated pieces of digital transformation projects of running. It should be cohesively forming part of the business strategy so that the efforts kind of compound into something that's really powerful.
Makes sense. I think in the last couple of years, from a Inoxico perspective, we've also embarked on automating a lot of the things and looking at the products and saying, we're going to automate a lot of the actual processes that our clients followed in terms of that digital transformation to give them the ability to make their decisions, to make their jobs a lot quicker, a lot easier, a lot faster. And I think we'll touch on that a little bit later on. But, where do you sort of start when you're considering transformation? I know we've been talking about it is important and everybody needs to be there and you need to have a roadmap and you need to sort of try and break it down to bite sizes. But where do you start? What is the starting point when you're saying, right, I don't want to consider digital transformation in my organization. I need to implement this. What is the starting point?
Yeah, I'm going to just kind of link back to the previous discussion around the business strategy. All right. So when we have a prioritized business strategy, something that we need to consider during that strategy is kind of thinking of our organization as kind of different flows of processes, right? And in that flows of the process, you have to ask yourself, where is the bottlenecks, right? Where do we have large delays because there's manual intervention, or large delays because a key person needs to do something, because a paper needs to be printed out, and signed and then scanned and processed, all that kind of different things that moves it. And there's a lot of theories around that. I think the theory of constraints, part of lean manufacturing and helping you identify where the bottlenecks are and then kind of doing your improvement projects on that specific bottlenecks. Now, you can have a bottleneck on an organizational level. You can have a bottleneck on a team level. The important thing, however, is if you look at it from a holistic perspective, that you don't make localized improvements. It's very easy for you to have small projects that optimize small parts, but all that they do is they create a backlog in the next step. Now the next step needs to manage a backlog as well as do what they do in the past. And ultimately, you're almost slowing down the entire system, even though you're thinking you're doing great. Or now this one team has more time than they used to have before. Now they start doing, left field things, and now that needs to be managed. And so it's important to know from a company perspective, where in your processes, where in the work, where in your solutions is bottlenecks, and kind of focus your digital transformation initiatives around improving those so that your entire throughput in your system could be something.
So that's an easy flow.
A very smooth, easy flow with little disruptions and interruptions as possible.
Okay, so that's sort of talking to the solution of when you get to those problems, how do you overcome them and ensure that it's a sort of steady flow of that transformation process rather than, as you say, creating something and then ending up being a bottleneck for somebody else. You sort of need to look at the bigger picture and saying, where does it start and where is it going to end? What's the end result? What's the goal? What is going to move the needle and what do we want to achieve? And considering all the aspects and departments and people and processes throughout that period to achieve that end goal.
Yeah. And I think it's important that people think about this on the different various levels. You need to think about your processes as a team. You need to think of the processes around the department, around the processes around the organization, around your products, around your services. And kind of think around those and see where the potential problems lie.
I think in our world as well, we sort of sit and say, we're looking at a aspect of a product and we're saying, we need to change this because of these reasons. And in our mind, it makes sense. But when you start considering the impact of what it has on other things, then you need to sit and say, okay, maybe it's not a good idea. We haven't considered that. Or, a lot of times we make a decision and then down the road, we say, oh, it's affected this, that, and the next thing. And then that creates, as you say, a bottleneck and a problem. And people are not always aware of the changes that they make in one certain aspect. They think it's sort of just isolated here and it'll work here. but the impact down the line, I think, is where the problem and the consideration needs to be.
And you can't always foresee it. I mean, there's a portion like saying that, analysis paralysis that you can go through.
Yeah.
So you can either have the strategy of saying that we're going to try and plan everything out in perfect detail. All right, so imagine you got a kind of a rocket, and I'm planning the trajectory of the rocket, and I'm pressing play. I know this is not perfectly correct, but you press play and the pre-execution logic kind of goes and the rocket goes to the moon.
Yeah.
Or you can say, I want to take the approach of a GPS, saying that I want to be responsive. I want to try things. I want to be fail early. I want to have this fast feedback loops, and I'm going to try something. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to shift it in a different direction. And I think in our world, we're much more prone to be exploratory, go and find solutions, test ideas out, kill it if it doesn't work, move forward and kind of adapt based on feedback, because you don't want to sit in a situation where you continue to analyze and this project just becomes bigger, and after a while you're missing the mark completely and you're not adapting to what the changes are in the market, just because you've got this plan that you need to execute, and getting more complicated with all the potential issues that you're trying to solve as well.
Of course. I think it's also important for sort of the IT or technology guys to sort of have a advisory role, because from my perspective, I sit and I do a certain thing, and as I said early on, I decide to change something, and I don't necessarily have the tech or the savvy or the know-how to understand how it affects different processes or products within the organization. And I think the sort of IT guys or the tech guys have got a much better understanding of where that particular change is going to be embedded in certain other things as well. And I think it's important that when you have an internal IT department or even a consulting team, that they have that sort of advisory capacity and the freedom to say, look, don't make this change because it's going to affect this and that in the next thing.
Yeah, I think it requires change from both sides. I think the one side of the business, which is not technology inclined, is around it being more inclusive and including technology. And then there's another part of the technology side, which is saying that we're not going to be purists, and we're not going to be know-it-alls around everything and being like, we find the perfect solution and we fight it. There should be something in balance and saying, what is good enough? Well, how can I help the teams to help themselves rather than trying to get involved and control everything? I also found in a lot of cases when you've got people that's really great at developing complex systems and large enterprise applications. If they have to solve a simple problem, it's very easy to find, if they say if you've got a hammer, everything looks like a nail kind of thing as well. So I think digital transformation and trying to adapt technology throughout the business requires changes throughout the organization. Yeah. People need to think about what is the pragmatic solution? What is the way that we go forward and we find this team to this is my problem that I have right now. What's the pragmatic solution to solve it? Is it a low-code solution that I can use to automate this process? It's not perfect, but again, Pareto principle, 80% of the value for 20% of the effort. And most of the time that's good enough. Or then having a conversation saying, I've done this, but this is not working. It's scaling. I used to do 3 of those a week. Now I'm doing 5,000 or 10,000. My solution that I have right now is not working. It needs to go under, a proper project design and needs to be implemented the right way as well. I think the other part around that is also, we touched on it on the communication part, but it's the danger of enabling all of the teams is they're not always aware of security risks. They're not always secure. We'll most probably touch on that a little bit later on as well. But you need to be able to have that feedback cycle and that conversation. And we have it in the sprint reviews, and so forth. But you have to have ability where people come back and say, this is what I've done.
Yeah.
Do you have feedback for me? Yeah. And you can't be always involved, but maybe part of the design and part of you coming back, closing the loop, how did it work? And then kind of have these cycles that kind of repeat.
Yeah. I think the communication is a big thing there, because I think in our organization, we've learned the hard way as well that, when you think you are solving a problem and you go out and you develop a fantastic product or a big project and you spend a lot of money on that, in the end, to see the product and be proud of it and then roll it out and find that actually doesn't solve the solution, or it solves part of the solution, or it only caters for a certain segment of the organization. And I think through hard learnings from our perspective as well, we've learned that we sort of adopt the fly swat approach, where you have you've identified a problem or a potential product or opportunity, and you sort of see how you can quickly do something, not big scale, but to see if that solves the problem. So you don't invest a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money in that. You sort of say, this is a small thing that we're doing to see if it can resolve it. And then if it does fit, and there's product market fit, and it solves the actual problem. Because a lot of times we think there's a problem and we don't actually get to the problem. We look at the solution rather than the problem.
Right. Make a lot of assumptions.
Exactly. Once you cut away with the assumptions and you identify the problem, we've got a sort of a small mind approach, if you want to call it that, to say, this small thing, let's see if that works. And if it does, sort of a mock-up, and then say, right, we're going to invest in this, we're going to build this, we're going to spend a lot of time and effort on it. Because the last thing we're going to do is say, let's go digital transformation, not consider all the aspects, not look at actually the problem, but looking at assumptions, then building something big with a lot of cost, and then you're sitting with a product that actually doesn't work.
Yeah, I think the first initial phase around any solution or any problem you're trying to solve is around, really the focus is not around solving it, it's around learning more about it. And whatever you do to learn, if it's a POC, if it's a, if it's a conversation, if it's, running experiments, prototypes, whatever it is you want to do, there's a lot of things that we can do from a learning perspective now. And I think that served us very well so far. Like it's a constant journey. Like I'm not going to make the claim that we do everything perfectly. I think, but we've discovered that learning and listening is a very powerful tool, I think, in the organization. And even they think you know a lot. If it comes to what the customer's needs are, like they know best. And being able to take a humble pie and listen and go forth. I think we are still on the journey, but it's something that's really served us well.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, and it's just want to touch on the point you made in terms of listening. A lot of times you sort of hear what the customer says, but you're not really listening. And when you hear, you say, "Oh, I've got a solution for this. I've got this. I can quickly do that." And you come up with a solution, and it's like, but no, that does not solve the actual problem. And a big thing here in any organization, whether it's internal, whether it's external, is to actually listen to what the problem is. Because once you find what the actual problem is, then you can go off and say, right, we can develop a solution, or, we've got a problem solver for that. And, we found that with our customers as well, where we've got products and we say, right, here's the solution for that. And the customer says, no, it doesn't. And we think, but why, but when you sit down and actually listen to what the actual problem is, then you find that, okay, this is what I need to solve. This is the actual thing I need to do for that client.
Yeah.
And whether it's internal or external, internal, we have conversations as well. And a lot of times it's difficult to relay what the actual problem is, because from my perspective, I would assume you understand it. From your perspective, you talk IT, I've got no clue what you're saying. And I'm like, what are you saying? Speak English. And I use that phrase quite often when I go to the IT guys and they give me some jargon. You've heard me say this 100 times, saying, what is that in English? So that communication needs to be there. So that we sort of get to a midway where we talk the same language, I think.
Very powerful, yeah.
So when we're talking then about automation and digital transformation, what is new and interesting that is available currently? What sort of have we got that's out there that we don't know about or should know about?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple of things that's interesting for me. Hopefully that could help for somebody online as well. It's a very wide setup. I think if we have to touch on everything that's happening right now, first of all, I won't know about everything. And I think
sort of highlights.
It won't everything, but I think that it's, once again, I'm going to just emphasize the point is, don't do it because it sounds cool. Don't do a transformation project because you want to say we're modern and we're hip. You're going to do that, you're going to waste a lot of money, and you're not necessarily going to make a big business impact. It needs to be something that's focused around a business goal, not a technology goal on the other side. But that being said, things that I found that was extremely helpful is I've seen that for me personally, Power Automate, which is the Microsoft automation platform. I think it's a very powerful suite of tools and utilities. A lot of these things you can find separate products and services and low-code solutions that you don't have to use Power Automate. But I've seen a lot of movement of data, the extract, transform, load, the ETL processes, where you get a file, you do something with the file, you process that file. A lot of that still happens if it happens manually within the organization. It's a great place for non-technical teams to use these kind of platforms to build processes and improvements in efficiencies in what they're doing.
Okay.
And it's not difficult to do. It's all through configuration. You don't need to be a programmer to be able to do that. I've also seen basic integrations of systems like iPaaS solutions in there, creating a Jira ticket to be able to go log it, send something to a Teams channel. Because it's the Microsoft platform, they've got all of these connectors and ways for you to kind of plug them into each other and form a story and do something with it, which means you don't have to program it. That makes it a lot faster for teams and people to work. You can do notifications, like it might be that when a specific activity or process has been completed, let a team know. Listen, we sometimes in the report space, if there's a transition, please go and look, this needs to happen. Just kind of making that wait time that you have in your processes less, because you just go and do this, or automating it if it's possible as well. So I would say that Power Automate is something that I think that most organizations should have some competency around that, and some champions going to non-technical teams, helping the adoption around this and helping them help themselves around it. Something that I just want to mention around it as well, if you don't want the technology team to come in and build an automated solution and step away, because a lot of cases, teams think they know what they want, but when you start building that process, it needs to be tweaked. It takes a while for a system that you build in, whether that's in a low-code tool or whatever, for you to actually optimize it. And if you build it in the most expensive form, is using custom development resources, it's a very difficult thing to change and modify. So it's much easier investing that stuff, doing low-code solutions and getting it to a maturity point where you understand the problem, understand how to solve it, and it reached the appropriate point of scaling to say, now, this is something I want an enterprise solution around. Go and wrap it, go and build it, take it through the development team, run it. And once again, it goes back to the pressure points. If your development team, I've never heard about a company that says, I've got enough developers, I don't know what to do with it, So in a lot of cases, that is a bottleneck in the organization for change. So you want to also remove unnecessary noise from that. Another one, from a process automation, there's a lot of different tools on the market. We've got some of them, but you get in various places as well, is digital signing. If you're doing, invoices, you're doing contracts, you're doing all that kind of different things. Don't have your customers and your employees, don't have them go in, print a document, sign it, upload it, that's unnecessarily difficult. We're living in a new age. Workflow systems, being able to take processes and build specific, automated solutions around business processes, whether that's custom to your organization or whether it's a specialist function. I think like our onboarding tools that you have or so forth, which is a specialized automation flow for a specific activity. You get more generalized ones that you can use for other places in the organization as well. And then, just making sure like chatbots, is another interesting one, being able to go in and ask your HR build how many leave days do they have available, or whether it's a support function that you have in Zendesk that that goes and extracts specific documents, phrases from documents and pushing it through.
I think process automation is a big thing, especially if we look back over the last couple of years, where companies still wanted to do business, but they're sitting with a application form, a credit application form that they need to get to a client, that client needs to complete, sign, and get back to them. And when you're working from home, everybody had the opportunity to sort of have a desktop or a laptop or whatever, a notebook at home, and be able to work. But when it comes to, now I need to print something, now I need to scan something back. I don't have a printer, I don't have a scanner, but I still need to complete this application form. And I think that's where a lot of our clients find value in the fact of going that automation process to say, we can get the application form digitally to the client. They can digitally sign it. They don't need to wet signature, all of that. And that sort of speeds up their process. And in the same sort of sentence, it could help them also transition to that sort of digital transformation process and scale their business at the same time. So it has got a lot of effects and sort of benefits, if you want to call it, to going that route where, a lot of other companies did not follow suit and said, well, we're happy with the way it was, but now I cannot get in the customer's face. How do I now trade? How do I do our business? Because this important piece of paper, I need to get signed, and it won't work.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the companies was forced on a rapid transformation roadmap because of COVID and the effects of that.
And it didn't necessarily work for them. A lot of companies, as you say, were forced, and they made sort of, okay, I need to solve this issue, and they solved the issue, but it created problems down the line in terms of the other things. And I think now perhaps they've got an opportunity to sit and think and say, how is it going to affect all the different steps within my organization, and now do a proper digital transformation sort of project, rather than just saying we need a quick fix because we're now in lockdown. What do I do? How do I trade?
No, definitely. Maybe just another thing to take note of around, just on your digital transformation journey is that don't try to do everything yourself. I mean, we live in a era where we're going to touch a little bit on cloud services and everything now soon, but we live in a era where a lot of the problems have large companies working specifically solving niche problems. All right. So if you want to have a support function, don't build the support function in your website. Don't use Zendesk, whatever the case might be. If you have a problem around, you want to do graphs and slicing and dicing, don't build your own reporting tool. Go and get a reporting tool that is
available, right?
A BI tool, whatever the case might be. And I think that this is important from a custom development point, is saying that make sure that your project that you're running, your custom project that you're running, is on your core product. You don't want to be doing this on left field things that have solutions existing in the market, or else you won't be able to move fast. You won't be able to adapt as those solutions improve. Software as a service has allowed us to subscribe to things that's continuously improving. As we provide software as a service solutions, we consume it as well. That allows us to move fast and focus on our niche. So, like there's a lot of the cloud offerings right now that's offering, APIs towards exposing artificial intelligence, stuff like image recognition, natural language processing. A lot of these kind of stuff is baked into the complexity and very heavy lifting that would have cost you a lot of money to invest and build yourself. Don't try and win Microsoft in that space or AWS. Focus on the part that you're doing, utilize that tools, bring it to augment your value proposition, and focus on the niche that you're providing that the rest of the people can't go anywhere. Bring them together. And then kind of push it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tools out there that we're not necessarily aware of. And as you say, rather than spending a lot of money, time, and effort developing something, go and see if there's a tool out there that you can actually utilize to benefit your actual project, rather than designing that actual tool. Because inevitably, it's going to be cheaper to get the tool rather than designing it yourself. So,
and it's distraction. I think what we always, very often miss is maybe we can do the version that we need for a cheaper price now. But now I need to maintain it as the changes come across. Now I've got this I need to achieve this goal on my core business, but I need to maintain the following things. And it's almost like you're just adding more weight and more weight, and you have to kind of drag this weight with you while you're going. Well, if it's a subscription, you're using somebody else is solving the problem, updating the problem.
To maintain it.
It's a low effort.
So, the first time I heard about cloud is when I had my Apple phone and they said, you're going to store all of this stuff in the cloud. I'm like, what cloud is it? Where's the cloud? And, that does not get blown away. Where's this cloud am I going to go? So what is cloud-based solutions, just in short? I mean, for the people like me who sort of want to know, where's this cloud hosted?
There's this meme that says, there's no such thing as cloud, just somebody else's computer. All right.
That makes sense. So my stuff gets stored on somebody else's computer.
That is true. But I think the difficulty around understanding, like, in the past, companies used to have their own servers, their own infrastructure that was kept on premise at the office. Maybe they were big enough to have their own data center. Other companies had their own servers and infrastructure inside data centers that were provided by external parties. But the big thing was you were responsible for your own infrastructure. What the cloud brings us, and especially with Amazon and Azure, that's kind of all across the world, it provides us easy access to managed infrastructure, managed solutions where you can use it and kind of scale it up. So in the past, if you had to do your own server setup, hundreds of thousands rands later to just kind of host a website, to start off. Now that barrier is broken, so you can scale as your needs increase. I run a personal hydroponics project at home that cost me, and I think on Azure, $250 a month. Just having a database and website containers and whatever the different things are. But if you want to, the same services can be much more expensive, but it could be global. It could be their scale is able to scale. It's resilient. It's all that different things. Then we're talking about a different ballgame. But the key part is not that it's cheap. Really, it's about that you've got this flexibility that grows with your needs. And you don't have to go and rip out large investments, replace it with hardware gets outdated. And also to a large degree, you don't have to have all of the specialists that you had in the past. You used to have teams of people that do like build masters, guys that do deployments, guys that manages infrastructure, patches on Tuesday, patch Tuesdays, all that kind of different things. And with the cloud, a lot of that complexities, and I want to say again, distractions from causing you not to focus on the core business is taken care of by Microsoft, by the AWS. And what you do is, from a configuration perspective, you go in, you take what you need, and you implement it from there.
Is it safe? You know, how easily is the data to be able to be hacked?
So I think it's a good question. I think the problem with cloud is the cloud data centers, if you think from a premise perspective and a physical access perspective, is very safe.
Okay.
You can go through virtual tours online. It's very interesting. They've got different boundaries that you go, security access. You won't get physical access into that service. That's the first thing to say. But then the secondary part on top of that becomes like, how do you use it? It's like this massive, powerful, flexible thing that can do everything. But it's only as secure as you configure it. So this is, I guess, what I once again would say is outsource to partners that understand cloud. If you're new to the cloud environment, the one thing that I would say you shouldn't do, in my personal opinion, don't do a lift and shift solution where you're taking your on-premise service and solutions and you just move it to the cloud and you drop it in there. You'll be stuck. You won't be able to kind of build on the capabilities of the cloud. It will cost you a lot of money, and it's not really adding a lot of value. So my recommendation in that is work with CSPs and specialists around that knows the cloud to help you define perimeters and security networks. I mean, our solutions got a public DMZ, a secure net, like there's all different subnets and networks and firewalls and WAVs and all kinds of different things that's securing and protecting it. But you don't get that necessarily out of the box for everything. Some of the shared solutions you do, but this is a specialist area and we don't have a lot of time to talk through it. But I would say that the cloud can be implemented securely, all right, and there's definitely ways to do it. But don't think that you'll just, by clicking a couple of buttons, you'll get it out of the box, everything. There's still a responsibility of making sure.
Sure. Obviously, the big thing is it needs to be protected. Whatever is in there, I want to protect. That's why I go that route. And I think that's most important for anybody saying, if I'm going to move whatever it is to the cloud, I need that data to be protected. And obviously, it's not going to want to cost me a packet. I want to move it there to be automated, to be sort of in this process of digital transformation, but it needs to be protected. And I think that's the big fear that everybody's got from moving something within my organization to a cloud-based solution.
I mean, I think it's much easier for us to trust it from a tech understanding perspective, because when we had to manage all of the complexities around handling data, when I'm talking about, you need to have built DR environments, you have to build resilient services, you have to build like all of these kind of stuff yourself. There's a lot of things that go wrong. All right. Well, if you're using the solutions that's in the cloud enterprise level, you get the best in class solutions, that you can use and you can utilize, that allows you for resilience, encryption during transit, encryption at rest, and all of that stuff is available for you. You just need to know how to configure it.
Sure. So talking about security quickly, how should we approach security when it comes to all of these cloud-based solutions or digital transformation?
So I think security is becoming everybody's mind. We've got a lot of data breaches in the last while. It's a sad thing. It's a real threat. I think, specifically in South Africa and other places in the world, since COVID, it's been spiking. There's definitely something that is worth considering. It's a large topic. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail around that. And I think that there's something that you need to make sure that your person responsible for looking at the security needs to be, I would say, a C-suite executive kind of person that's involved with that, because most of the security changes and improvements is proactive. So it's very difficult to get business to buy in if you don't have a senior representative kind of pushing for that agenda and making sure that stuff get the attention before it's too late. There's a lot of different things to consider. I would say a couple of points that I will put on there is make sure that you get external eyes on your systems. Don't try to hide your weaknesses, and when you're doing external audits, play ball. Get the feedback. If there's issues, address it. Have vulnerability scannings that's happily giving you results on a continuous basis. Schedule external penetration testing. It's impossible to know everything that's happening. You can subscribe to the newsletters. You can know what's happening in the space, but rather know about problems than not know about problems and address it. The other one is just following industry standards. There's ISO 27001, 101, there's SOC 2, there's NCR, POPIA, a lot of different things that guide you around how to securely handle your solutions. So all that I would say is have somebody that's aware of those, make sure it's part of your consideration. It's something that is, I want to say, looked at from a senior perspective, even though there's nothing burning right now. It's going to prevent it from the future.
Because security and the data that you got, the IP that you've got is obviously, the most important thing, other than sort of the people in your organization, to protect and secure that information at all times. Okay, so I think in terms of Inoxico, where we sort of came from in terms of just touching on a couple of points of digital transformation and looking at problems that our clients had, two things that I could easily think of that we addressed when, sort of taking that path of digital transformation in the customers, our clients' world, was two important things over the last couple of years where sort of banks decided they're not going to provide, or most banks are not going to provide bank codes anymore. And the question of trade references, when nobody wants to give trade references and they throw POPI at that all the time. And I think in terms of Inoxico, that's a step that we took in order to give customers still some relevant information on, firstly, the bank codes. We'll be doing bank statement analysis, and then looking at sort of the old traditional trade references and saying, well, payment profile information and how customer behaves is a lot more important, and giving our customers those two options as opposed to sort of the old school way of thinking where we can't get that information anymore. We transitioned over to the sort of medium where we're saying we have got information, it is automated, this is what we're able to provide for them. So I think that is important to mention, that if there is an issue for anybody on board that they need to have a chat to us, come and have a chat to us regarding those things. But I think from an operational perspective and where our business has gone in terms of our platform that we've got now, and the launch we had in June was, we sort of turned the credit industry on its head. And I've been working in the credit industry for a very long time, probably as long as you've been doing IT. And this is a first where we've sort of said, we're taking it and we're transforming and automating the entire process where you no longer have to go and ask for something, but we will give you all of that information, proactively analyze it, proactively give you everything that you need to make that decision-making process on your side a lot quicker and easier. So from our side, we're pushing that digital transformation sort of concept into the client's world. It's now for them to say, how are we going to absorb that information and transition in our world with it?
Yeah, I think maybe to mention around that is it's not something that we just quickly switched on.
Yeah.
Right. We had many months of experimentation,
Sure.
Testing. Can we do it? How can we do it?
It's a 2-year process, I think.
Exactly. Just before we even started with the entire thing. So yeah. I think it's important to understand that digital transformation, if you run into a problem and you're running out of time, it's almost too late.
Yeah.
You need to have these kind of initiatives and slowly build towards a solution incrementally until you get to it. Yes.
Sure. Okay, I think we're almost out of time. Just some closing remarks from your side. If we do have questions that we don't get to here, we will answer them on this platform and you'll be able to get the answers on here. But just in closing, digital transformation.
Yeah, I think there's two things that I would like to just kind of leave with everybody online to think about. Is that the first of all is that don't think about technology as a centralized resource within one single department within your organization. There's a whole move towards democratization of technology, and this is really enablement of the teams to help themselves with technology. And that's something we all need to understand. Is technology shouldn't be a scarce resource only within a part of the organization. We need to be celebrating it when people make movements, even if it's small, throughout the organization, and enable people to do that. That's the first part. And then I think the second part on the more custom development on the technology department side, an important thing over there is just don't reinvent the wheel. Make sure you focus on the niche and the stuff that you are responsible, that's core to your business. The other supplementary and auxiliary kind of services, go for things that's existing, embed that, utilize it, outsource it, so that you can maximize the value that you're producing in your niche and not kind of get distracted by other things on the other side. That's in summary what I would say.
Perfect. Okay, a lot of what Maurice says makes sense. A lot was not English. I'll ask him about that at a later stage because obviously, that's the IT talk. And as I said, I always go back and say, sort of translate this in English for me. So if you guys have any questions regarding any of the discussions we had today, please reach out. We will be able to address some of the Q&As in here. But I think for that, thank you, Maurice. I think it was insightful. I certainly, every time I talk to you, I learn something new. And the things I hear, if I don't understand, I'll definitely come and ask at a later stage. But I think in terms of digital transformation, it is the way that, the majority of the players are moving. And it is something that you definitely need to consider if you want to scale your business, especially these days where everybody's got the opportunity to do that. And if you're not, you're sort of lagging behind.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, everybody, for joining. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ladies and gents. We will address some questions in here. We don't want to keep you too long. I know some people have got other meetings. But reach out if you've got any questions or any suggestions, and we'll be happy to address them.
Do anybody have a question now? You're welcome to raise your hand.
Yeah, we've got a couple of minutes. Anybody on here? Everybody's not talking today. Okay, we'll address some of the questions on here, and then we'll chat again. I think we've got a session next month. So thanks for your time. Have a good day.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Cheers. Bye.